stand still.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today, we're counting down our picks for bands that dazzled the 1980s, but may have been underrated then or slipped into obscurity now. We're mainly focusing on bands whose output and reception peaked at the time. Number 20, Icon. The glam metal movement sold a fantasy of big-haired party animals. True to their name, Icon understood the image, but also how to bring the heavy sound. Originally named Schoolboys, the Arizona outfit matured the catchy frills of glam with more traditional or extreme momentum for their acclaimed 1984 debut. They weren't entirely part of the oversaturated scene, though, so subsequent albums incorporated arena rock elements to a mixed reception. Eventually, personal priorities like frontman Stephen Clifford's religious awakening prompted Icon to disband in 1990. Still, their cult following persists for the fiery musicianship that stood out in the golden age of glam metal. Icon reunited as a live act in 2008 and are looking to get back in the studio. Number 19, Fine Young Cannibals. '80s fans can't get their fill of the Fine Young Cannibals cover of Suspicious Minds or the original classic, She Drives Me Crazy. Some may forget that these sophistopop pioneers were hardly a two-hit wonder. FYC's smartly composed cross between contemporary pop and R&B won their eponymous 1985 album excellent reviews.
Johnny, we're sorry. Won't you come on home?
1989's The Raw and the Cooked was an even bigger hit, with audiences praising the addition of soul and new wave. The chart-topping Grammy nominee and Brit Award winner was packed with hot singles, yet the lead one became the band's defining hit. FYC may have broken up over creative conflict just as they were picking up, but they're endlessly worth looking back on. Number 18, Oingo Boingo.
From my heart and from my hand, why don't people understand my intention?
The 80s sure didn't forget about these LA new wavers. Oingo Boingo was punk-influenced, prolific, and endlessly infectious, thanks to the charisma and eclectic songwriting of frontman Danny Elfman. Their live shows were the stuff of legend, and they contributed to many film and TV soundtracks. Most notably, the 1985 John Hughes comedy, Weird Science. After the group broke up 10 years later, Elfman developed his solo career as a score composer into one of the most celebrated in modern Hollywood. Many have said that this legacy has overshadowed that of his popular original project and its massive rotation of talented musicians. But there's no arguing against Oingo Boingo being as good for your soul as ever.
Nothing bad ever happens to me. Nothing bad ever happens to me.
Number 17, Hanoi Rocks.
The nights are wearing me down, and it's hard getting through the day.
Where many hair metalheads obscured the genre's glam rock roots, Hanoi Rocks brought them to the forefront. The Helsinki Hellions had the funky glitz and clever songwriting that were all the rage in the 70s. But with punk overtones and a heavy metal heft, They broke every rule of mainstream and alternative trends at the time. Consequently, they had a mostly cult following until tragedy made the headlines. In 1984, drummer Nicholas "Razzle" Dingley died in a car wreck involving an intoxicated Vince Neil of Motley Crue. This sadly became a prominent footnote in Hanoi Rocks' legacy, following their initial breakup shortly thereafter. Nonetheless, between the classics and some legendary reunions, there's no leaving them out of the 80s glam mythos.
Don't you ever leave me now. Don't you ever leave me, baby.
Number 16. XTC.
We're only making plans for Nigel.
Rising with the advent of new wave, the Swindon Ensemble first gained cult and critical recognition with 3 albums in the 70s. By the 80s, though, the underground sound that XTC helped develop dominated the mainstream.
Dear God, hope you got the letter and I pray you can make it better down here.
Even then, their pop shift stood out on continued punk elements and progressive hooks. XTC won consistent acclaim and delivered many hits, culminating in the controversial Dear God in 1987.
Dear God, sorry to disturb you, but I feel that I should be loud and clear.
Along the way, a bad record deal with Virgin left the band in financial straits. Their labor strike in '92 proved ruinous for their popularity, but by the time they quietly disbanded in 2006, XTC were an 80s cult favorite that remains unlike any pop you've heard.
Won't believe in heaven, hell, no saints, no sinners, no devils, well.
Number 15. Japan.
When the room is quiet, the daylight almost gone.
Although they released more studio albums in the 70s, the British group Japan was made for the 80s. That was when their synthwave style was most commercially successful, particularly with 1982's Ghosts.
I could not be stopped when my chance came to be king, the ghost of my life.
Japan still managed to find new and exciting ways to compose such music. But in 1982, internal conflicts collapsed Japan at the height of their status. It's just as well as they were facing accusations of capitalizing on the new romantic scene that they in fact influenced and rejected.
In that case, I don't want no fight. I do believe that would only break my heart.
Perhaps too highbrow for pop appeal, the band did return to the UK Top 40 when they briefly reunited under the name Rain Tree Crow. Japan has since maintained its cult following as architects and a highlight of an infectious style. Number 14. The Time. Though Morris Day is credited alongside Prince with developing Minneapolis's eclectic musical signature in the 80s, The Time is a force all their own. The thrilling fusion of funk, soul, and rock was rivaled only by live shows exploding with elaborate musicianship and dance. The Time is considered the most critically and commercially successful act in Prince's creative community. This proved to be a double-edged sword. Day's creative input and legacy were overshadowed by his late friend, whose estate even tried to bar Day from using his own band's name in 2022. He settled the legal dispute and continues to rock under the banner of Morris Day and The Time. Of course, the catalog of their heyday is simply timeless.
You wonder how I do it. It's just one simple rule. I'm just cool.
Number 13. Big Country. The whole world was into In a Big Country when the similarly named band blew up the charts in 1983. They were actually a local phenomenon, particularly in their native Scotland. Big Country's unique fusion of new wave, alternative, and Celtic folk yielded enchanting ballads that ran the gamut from heavy to heart-wrenching.
I've never seen you look like this without a reason. Another promise falling through another season.
Stuart Adamson's lyrical themes included heritage, class, conflicts, war, and more. The band's harder material in the 90s may not have drawn as much attention, but fans embraced their experimental and iconoclastic flair up to their breakup following Adamson's death in 2001. Formally reuniting in 2013, Big Country continues to provoke nostalgia for a time long before them, while remaining as relevant as ever.
In a big country, dreams stay with you like a lover's voice parts the mountainside.
Number 12, Hüsker Dü.
Well, could you be the one they talk about? Well, hiding inside behind another door.
The 80s sound, admittedly, wasn't for everyone. It sure didn't appeal to Hüsker Dü, though the power trio from St. Paul, Minnesota didn't just favor the rebellious punk of the 70s. They were looking ahead with a melodic yet experimental twist on the budding hardcore scene. This style would come to be known as post-hardcore and would have a key influence on the alternative rock explosion of the 90s. Alas, Hüsker Dü missed out, having broke up in '88 due to tension and struggles with substance use disorder. The cult sensation's legacy can be found in their famous disciples and renowned solo work, but the music itself demands to be heard by punk and alternative fans. Number 11, Cocteau Twins. If there was any question about the artistic value of 80s music's technical and stylistic trends, the Cocteau Twins put that to bed. The Scottish alt-rockers' haunting aesthetic was led by Elizabeth Fraser's ethereal vocals and Robin Guthrie's groundbreaking ambient engineering. This renowned artistry elevated contemporary gothic rock and established the niche genre's aptly named dream pop. And yet nobody could sound quite like the Cocteau Twins. Unfortunately, the band fell apart with Fraser and Guthrie's relationship in 1997. Things ended on such bitter terms that the former romantic couple refused to work together decades later. Although they've independently had great success in several areas of the music industry, Cocteau Twins remain an entrancing gem. Number 10, ABC.
All my dreams came true last night. All my hopes and fears.
Synth-pop was big business back in the 1980s, with Britain's ABC existing in our minds as one of the genre's unsung heroes. The arrangements here sound bigger than many of ABC's other contemporaries, lending songs like Be Near Me an impressive amount of orchestral oomph. Elsewhere, lead vocalist Martin Fry possesses a strong voice, one capable of delivering big, strong hooks while also containing a proper amount of sensitivity. The 80s, like any other decade, were full of one-hit wonders, but we feel like ABC's track record speaks for itself. These guys were a cut above the rest.
Shoot that poison arrow through my heart. Shoot that poison arrow.
Number 9. A Flock of Seagulls.
I walk along the avenue. I never thought I'd meet a girl like you.
It's quite quite unfair that this pioneering English act from the new wave movement is known more for its assortment of hairstyles than the quality of its music. After all, the discography of A Flock of Seagulls is actually quite full of interesting tunes for those willing to do a little digging. Oh sure, I Ran So Far Away is a defining tune from the 1980s, but A Flock of Seagulls albums also retain deep cuts that showcase their musicality. Tunes like Space Age Love Song and The More You Live, The More You Love demonstrated the excellent synth and guitar interplay within the band's songwriting and helped further distance A Flock of Seagulls from more fashion-focused acts of the day. Number 8. The Fixx.
The deception will tact. Just what are you trying to say?
It's not by accident that this list contains a startling amount of musical talent from the United Kingdom. There was something of a second British invasion during the 1980s, as legions of new wave, post-punk, and heavy metal acts emerged from that area to take over the rest of the world. The Fixx weren't so easily pigeonholed into a genre, however, and this both helped and hurt them over the years.
There will be no more isolation in our secret separation.
On one hand, they were a solid rock act, notching hit singles such as One Thing Leads to Another. On the other hand, there wasn't really a gimmick upon which to sell the Fixx overseas. The music speaks for itself essentially, and we feel the band was actually a bit underrated.
Do what they say, say what they mean. One thing leads to another.
Number 7. OMD, aka Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. Now, here was a band whose choice of name definitely helped define their career. Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark are probably better known by the acronym OMD, but this defiantly unhip electronic music duo achieved quite a bit of success during their career. That said, we still feel that there's gold to be mined beyond the obvious OMD hits like If You Leave.
I touch you once, I touch you twice, I won't let go at any price.
Band members Andy McCluskey and Paul Humphreys knew how to make bass, synth, percussion, and voice sound big as hell, boasting hooks large enough to snag a whale. The music of Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark definitely sounds of its time, but we don't think that's a bad thing whatsoever. In fact, that's exactly why we love them. Number 6. LA Guns. The commercial landscape of 1980s heavy metal, like any musical movement, possessed a myriad of subgenres. Not all glam was made equal, to be sure, with LA Guns existing within that special little microcosm known as sleaze metal.
Talk about love. Talk about love.
This was a rough and ready rock band who, alongside another group called Hollywood Rose, resulted in the formation of superstars Guns N' Roses. LA Guns did achieve chart success with the single The Ballad of Jane and put out a lot of music in the 90s, but we honestly prefer the less polished nature of their 1988 debut. That record contained rip-roaring jams like No Mercy, Sex Action, and One More Reason. It was a perfect midway point between dirty looks and big hooks. Number 5. Savatage. We know that the Trans-Siberian Orchestra are a big deal around the holidays, but there's also a connection to their metallic pedigree that reaches to the 1980s. We're referring to Savatage, a group founded by brothers Chris and John Oliva. The The former's generational skills as a guitar talent were tragically cut short by a drunk driver in 1993. But Savatage's discography with him remains indispensable for metalheads who appreciate influences from classical music. The band continued along after both Chris Olivia's death as well as John Olivia's departure from lead vocals, with guitarist Al Pitrelli eventually collaborating with John and composer Paul O'Neill on TSO. For our money though, LPs like Gutter Ballet and Hall of the Mountain King are worth their weight in gold. Number 4. Ultravox. New wave never sounded so dramatic. Ultravox seemed to have studied hard during the How to Write a Great Chorus classes while in songwriting school. How else could one explain the epic grandeur of hits like The Voice, Him, or Dancing with Tears in My Eyes? The latter in particular highlights how Midgear's lead vocals take Ultravox to another level as he soars with stately, insistent grandeur. Ultravox crafted 1980s pop as high arts, a melodically satisfying approach with impeccable hooks and note perfection execution. The band may have experimented a bit during the 1970s, but it was the 80s where Ultravox's rise to musical prominence was assured. Number 3. The Chameleons. Call it shoegaze or maybe post-punk, but there was definitely something special to the sound of the Chameleons UK. This English group's reverb-soaked journey into atmospheric rock had a bit of a malevolent streak. Specifically, albums such as Script of the Bridge would go on to influence heavier metal acts such as Francis Alcest, groups that would be inspired by the Chameleons' ability to mope and rock in equal measure. Songs such as Don't Fall and Up the Down Escalator meld brooding, resonant vocals with edgy guitar licks and this feeling of aggression bubbling just below the surface. It's brilliant stuff.
It's just a trick of the light.
Number 2. The Church.
Wish I knew what you were looking for.
Some bands just exude an effortless amount of cool. Australia's The Church are definitely one of those bands. It's difficult to pinpoint anything specific about their sound other than it feels dreamlike and resplendent. They create a gorgeous tapestry of melodies and atmosphere that weave their web in a manner that doesn't quite feel like goth, nor traditional rock.
Go now, you've been set free. Another month or so you'll be gorging on me.
Instead, The Church takes listeners upon a journey with songs such as their definitive hits, Under the Milky Way. Truth be told, however, there's a lot to love about their discography, which has put out lots more material since their breakout decade. Whichever era true fans prefer, The Church is just a great band.
They only make me feel like breathing in unguarded moments.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. The Cults. They were a band able to continually reinvent themselves while also never forgetting how to rock. The Cults started out in full goth mode under the moniker of Southern Death Cult before the mid-80s saw a shift into full arena rock, Sturm und Drang. Truth be told, we love it all, including the work the Cult did during the 90s and beyond. That said, There was just something special about that holy trinity of albums between 1985 and 1989: Love, Electric, and Sonic Temple. The latter in particular saw anthems like Firewoman send Cult into the stratosphere. Frontman Ian Astbury howls like a man possessed, while embodying a dichotomous personality, stresses shamanism and hedonism in equal measure. And we're not worthy. What are your favorite 80s bands to continue spreading the word about? Jam with us in the comments.
I really liked your song too.